My husband developed feelings for a woman he met while volunteering during his recovery and asked me to open our marriage so he could date both of us, but when I refused and filed for divorce he started harassing me. Hi Reddit, I need an outside perspective on what is happening in my marriage right now. My husband Kenneth, 37M, and I, 34F, have been together for 11 years and married for 5. We met through mutual friends at a photography exhibition and connected over our shared love for travel and architecture. After years of saving and planning, we bought a small duplex last year in the suburbs. The plan was to fix it up together and eventually rent out one side for extra income. Kenneth works as a graphic designer and I work in library services. Our schedules used to align well. We would spend weekends exploring new hiking trails or working on the duplex renovations. About 8 months ago, Kenneth got into a car accident. Nothing too serious, but he injured his back and needed physical rehabilitation. The doctor recommended he take 3 months off work to heal properly. His company was understanding and he stayed home on medical leave. During his recovery, Kenneth could not do much physically. He spent most days on the couch with ice packs and pain medication. I continued working full-time at the library while also taking care of him in the evenings. I would cook meals, help him with exercise as the physical therapist recommended, and handle most of the household tasks since he could not bend or lift anything heavy. Around the second month of his recovery, Kenneth mentioned he wanted to do something productive with his time at home. He had always talked about wanting to give back to the community, so he signed up as a remote volunteer for a non-profit organization that helps small businesses with branding and marketing materials. The work was flexible and he could do it from the couch with his laptop. He seemed genuinely excited about the volunteer work. He would tell me about the small business owners he was helping and show me logos he had designed. I was glad he found something meaningful to occupy his time during recovery. The volunteer group met once a week over video calls to discuss ongoing projects and brainstorm ideas. Kenneth started looking forward to those weekly meetings. He would mention names of other volunteers and talk about their different skill sets. There was a woman named Iris who handled social media strategy. Kenneth brought her up a few times in casual conversation. He mentioned she had interesting ideas about digital marketing and that she was around 30 years old. After about 6 weeks of volunteering, I noticed Kenneth was on his phone more than usual. He would text during dinner or excuse himself to take calls in the other room. When I asked about it, he said the volunteer group had created a private chat to coordinate projects more efficiently. I did not think much of it at the time. His back was getting better and he was starting to move around more. We were supposed to start planning for children soon. We had talked about it before his accident and agreed that once he recovered and returned to work, we would try for a baby. Then one Saturday evening about 5 weeks ago, Kenneth asked if we could talk. He looked pale and his hands were shaking. We sat down at the kitchen table and he told me he needed to confess something. He said he had developed feelings for Iris from the volunteer group. He explained that their conversations had moved from group chats to private messages about 2 months prior. Then they started having phone calls separate from the volunteer work. Iris had told him she had feelings for him and Kenneth admitted he felt the same way about her. I sat there trying to process what he was saying. Kenneth was crying at this point. He said they had exchanged messages that were flirtatious and intimate in nature. He showed me some of the texts on his phone. They were explicit. There were messages about wanting to be together physically and descriptions of what they would do if they met in person. I felt sick reading them. Kenneth kept saying he was sorry and that it happened gradually without him realizing how far it had gone. He said Iris had asked to meet him in person but he had refused. He insisted they never met face to face and nothing physical happened between them. I could not stay in the house that night. I called my coworker Beth and asked if I could sleep on her couch. I did not explain much over the phone but she said yes immediately. I packed a bag and left. Kenneth tried to follow me to the door but I told him I needed space. I spent the whole night at Beth's place staring at the ceiling. She made tea and sat with me but did not push me to talk. The next morning I called in sick to work. Beth did too and we went for a long walk in the park near her apartment. I told her everything. After 2 days at Beth's place, I went back home. Kenneth had left several voicemails apologizing and asking to talk. When I walked in, the house was clean and there was food in containers on the counter with notes attached. He had cooked meals for me to reheat. We sat down and had a long conversation. Kenneth explained that the connection with Iris started because she understood the frustration he was experiencing during his recovery. He said he felt useless being stuck at home and Iris would encourage him and make him feel valued. He admitted that their conversations became a form of escape. I asked him why he did not talk to me about those feelings instead. He said he did not want to burden me when I was already doing so much. I pointed out that I was his wife and that is what marriage was for. He agreed and apologized again. He said he wanted to make our marriage work. He deleted Iris's contact information from his phone while I watched. He gave me his phone and computer passwords. We talked about rebuilding trust. I agreed to try to work through it but told him it would take time. For the next few weeks, things seemed to improve on the surface. Kenneth went back to work part-time as his back continued to heal. He stopped volunteering with the nonprofit. He was attentive and helpful around the house. We went to a counselor once but the soonest ongoing appointment we could get was 2 months away due to their schedule. We decided to try talking things through on our own in the meantime. Then 3 days ago, Kenneth brought up something during dinner. He said he had been thinking a lot about his feelings. He told me he still had feelings for Iris even though they were no longer in contact. He said he loved me and wanted to stay married and still wanted to have children together. But he also said he could not ignore what he felt for Iris. He asked if I would be open to exploring a different kind of marriage arrangement. He used the term ethical non-monogamy. He explained that some couples maintain their primary relationship while also having secondary relationships with other people. He said it would involve clear rules and communication and that I could also see other people if I wanted to. I put my fork down and stared at him. He kept talking about how it could work if we established boundaries. He mentioned that we knew a couple from our old neighborhood who had an open marriage and seemed content. He said he had looked into it and that many people made it work successfully. He assured me I would still be his priority and that nothing about our life together would change fundamentally. We would still live together, share finances, and raise children together. He just wanted permission to also maintain a relationship with Iris. I told him I needed time to think about it. He said he understood and that he was not pressuring me. But I felt pressured. The conversation had come out of nowhere. I thought we were working on repairing what he had broken. Instead, he was asking me to accept the situation and legitimize it. That night I could not sleep. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. I had never considered anything other than monogamy for myself. The idea of Kenneth being intimate with someone else while coming home to me made me nauseous. I have been avoiding him since that conversation. I go to work early and stay late organizing the return carts even when my shift is over. When I come home, I go straight to the bedroom. Kenneth has tried to bring it up again, but I told him I am still processing. I do not know what to do. Part of me wants to believe this is just a phase and that he will realize what he is asking is unreasonable. Another part of me wonders if I am being too rigid by not even considering it. Our relationship has been good for 11 years. We have built a life together. The duplex represents years of saving and planning. I do not know if I am supposed to throw all of that away because he developed feelings for someone else while he was vulnerable during his recovery. I am writing this to get outside opinions. Is this something people actually make work, or is he just trying to have permission to continue his affair without guilt? Should I consider his request, or is this a sign that our marriage is already over? Update 1: It has been almost 4 weeks since my original post. I appreciate everyone who took the time to respond. Many of you pointed out things I needed to hear even though they were difficult to accept. I want to provide an update on what has happened since then. After I made that post, I spent several more days thinking about everything. I decided I needed more information before making any decisions. I sat down with Kenneth and told him we needed to have completely honest conversations about the situation with Iris. I asked him specific questions and made it clear that I would not move forward without knowing the full truth. Kenneth confirmed again that they never met in person. However, when I pressed him on why they never met, he admitted it was not entirely his choice. Iris lives 4 states away in Colorado. The distance made it impractical for them to meet without significant planning and expense. This information bothered me more than his original confession. It meant his refusal to meet her was not entirely based on loyalty to our marriage but on logistical constraints. I also asked Kenneth about the couple he mentioned from our old neighborhood who had an open marriage. He admitted that he had reached out to them after his feelings for Iris developed. He had asked them questions about how they made their arrangement work. They were the ones who suggested he look into ethical non-monogamy as an option. Learning this made me realize Kenneth had been planning this conversation for weeks before he brought it up to me. It was not a spontaneous idea. He had researched it and consulted with others before presenting it to me as a solution. I decided I needed to talk to these neighbors myself. Kenneth was hesitant but gave me their contact information. I met with the wife, Jennifer, for coffee. She was kind and explained how their arrangement worked for them. She emphasized that it required complete honesty, firm boundaries, and mutual enthusiasm from both partners. Then she asked me if this was something I wanted for myself or if I was only considering it because Kenneth wanted it. I admitted it was the latter. Jennifer told me that arrangements like theirs only work when both people genuinely want that lifestyle. She said if I was doing it just to keep Kenneth, it would eventually destroy me and the marriage anyway. I thanked her for her honesty and left. That conversation gave me clarity. I went home and told Kenneth we needed to talk seriously. I explained to him that what he did with Iris was not a mistake or a gradual buildup he could not control. It was a choice. He chose to take their conversations private. He chose to engage in intimate messaging. He chose to tell her he loved her. I told him that asking to open our marriage now was just asking for permission to continue what he had already started behind my back. I explained that ethical non-monogamy is built on trust and communication from the beginning, not as a band-aid for infidelity. Kenneth became defensive at first. He said I was being unfair and not trying to understand his perspective. He said relationships evolve and that he was being honest with me about his feelings instead of hiding them. I told him that honesty after betrayal is not the same as honesty before. We argued for over an hour. Eventually Kenneth broke down. He admitted that I was right. He said he knew what he was asking was selfish but he did not want to lose what he had with Iris. He apologized repeatedly and said he would end things with her completely. I asked him if he had been in contact with Iris since he gave me his passwords. He hesitated before admitting that he had created a separate email account that I did not know about. They had been messaging through that account the entire time. I asked to see the messages. He refused at first but eventually logged into the account on his phone and handed it to me. The messages showed they had been talking every day. Some of the recent messages were about Kenneth trying to convince Iris to wait while he figured things out with me. Other messages showed Kenneth expressing frustration that I was not being receptive to opening the marriage. I handed his phone back to him and told him I was done. Kenneth panicked. He said he would delete the account right then and cut off all contact with Iris. He pulled up the email and showed me that he was deleting it. He gave me his phone again and told me to check everything. I did not take it. I told him the damage was already done. He had lied to me even after his confession. He had maintained contact with Iris while pretending to work on our marriage. Kenneth spent the next several days trying to prove his commitment. He sent Iris a final message ending things and showed me her response. She was angry and accused him of leading her on. She said he had told her he was planning to leave me eventually. Kenneth insisted he never said that, but I had no way of knowing what was true anymore. He gave me access to every account he had. He became excessively affectionate and attentive. He bought flowers and cooked elaborate dinners. He wrote me letters apologizing and explaining that he had been confused and scared. During one of these conversations, Kenneth said something that stuck with me. He said part of why he connected with Iris was because our life had become routine. He said I had stopped making him feel desired and that Iris made him feel special again. He said he had become addicted to the attention she gave him. When I pointed out that I had been taking care of him during his entire recovery while he was texting another woman, he backtracked. He said he did not mean it that way and that he appreciated everything I did for him. But the words were already out there. I realized something during that conversation. Kenneth was trying to blame me for his actions without directly saying it. He was suggesting that if I had been more attentive or made him feel more special, he would not have sought attention elsewhere. I also realized he did not believe his own excuse. He was grasping for any justification that would make his actions seem more understandable. Since then I have been trying to figure out what I actually want. The truth is I do not know anymore. We have been together for 11 years. He knows me better than anyone else. We have shared experiences and inside jokes that no one else would understand. When I think about starting over with someone new, it terrifies me. I would have to date again. I would have to go through the awkward early stages of getting to know someone. I would have to explain why my marriage ended. I would potentially have to sell the duplex we just bought. I would have to split our belongings and disentangle our finances. But when I look at Kenneth now, I do not see the person I married. I see someone who hurt me and then tried to manipulate me into accepting it. I see someone who maintained a secret relationship while telling me he was committed to repairing our marriage. Every time he hugs me or tells me he loves me, I wonder if he is thinking about her. I know that even if I decide to stay and work through this, I will never forget what happened. The knowledge of his messages with Iris will always be there in the back of my mind. I am going to start seeing a counselor on my own. Our couples counseling appointment is still 6 weeks away, but I cannot wait that long. I need help sorting through my thoughts and figuring out what I actually want versus what I am afraid to lose. I do not know yet if I am staying or leaving. Right now I am just trying to get through each day. Update 2: It has been 3 months since my last update. I filed for divorce 8 weeks ago. Kenneth signed the papers after initially refusing for several days. I have been trying to maintain no contact, but that has not gone the way I expected. I am writing this update because the situation has gotten worse and I need to document what has been happening. After Kenneth signed the divorce papers, I told him we should not communicate unless it was about the house or finances. I blocked his personal number but kept one line of communication open through email for necessary matters. For the first week, he respected this boundary. Then the messages started. Kenneth began sending me long emails that were not about the house or finances. The emails talked about how I was making a mistake and how we could still fix things. He said he had completely ended things with Iris and that he was willing to do whatever it took to save our marriage. When I did not respond to the emails, he started texting me from different numbers. I would block one number and he would message from another. The texts started becoming accusatory. He said I was giving up too easily and not fighting for our relationship. He said our 11 years together should mean more than one mistake. He sent me screenshots of old photos from trips we had taken together. He would caption them with messages about how happy we used to be. About 3 weeks ago, Kenneth sent me a 6-page letter to my work address at the library. The letter stated that he was concerned about my mental state. He wrote that I was not thinking clearly and that the stress of the situation was affecting my judgment. He suggested I was making rash decisions because I was traumatized. He said the people I was listening to, meaning my friend Beth and other supporters, were giving me bad advice because they did not understand the full situation. The letter also said that he was struggling just as much as I was and that I was not considering his feelings at all. I showed the letter to my lawyer during our meeting about the house sale. She read it and said it was an attempt at manipulation. She advised me to keep all communications from Kenneth as documentation. She also suggested I consider filing for a restraining order if his behavior escalated. I told her I did not think it would come to that. Kenneth had never been physically aggressive and I assumed he would eventually accept the divorce and move on. I was wrong. 2 weeks ago on a Saturday morning, I was leaving my apartment to run errands when I saw Kenneth standing on the sidewalk near the entrance. My apartment is not near the duplex we own together. He would have had to drive 20 minutes to get there. When he saw me, he started walking toward me. He said he just wanted to talk face to face because I was not responding to his messages. He said he deserved a chance to explain himself properly and that texting and emails were not adequate for something this important. I told him he needed to leave. He said he would leave after we talked. I started walking back toward my building entrance and he followed me. He was talking the entire time about how I was being unfair and how he did not deserve to be cut out of my life completely. He said the divorce was not what I actually wanted and that I was just scared. I reached my building door and he grabbed my arm to stop me from going inside. I pulled my arm away and told him not to touch me. He let go but stepped closer. He said he was not trying to upset me and that he just wanted me to listen. I could feel my heart racing. I reached for the door handle again and Kenneth moved between me and the door. He said we were not done talking and that I needed to stop running away from him. At that point I started yelling at him to move. Other people in the building heard me and someone opened the door from inside. Kenneth stepped back when he saw other people and I went inside quickly. The person who opened the door asked if I was okay. I said yes and went up to my apartment. I was shaking for hours after that. I called Beth and told her what happened. She insisted I call the police and file a report. I did not call the police right away. I was not sure if what Kenneth did qualified as anything illegal. He had not hurt me. He just would not let me leave when I wanted to. But I could not stop thinking about the look on his face when he blocked the door. It was not the Kenneth I first knew from our 11 years together. The next day Kenneth sent me another series of texts from a new number. He said he was sorry for showing up at my apartment, but that I had left him no choice. He said he did not mean to scare me and that he was just desperate. He said if I would just agree to meet him one time at a neutral location like a coffee shop, he would stop contacting me afterward. I did not respond. Later that evening, Kenneth showed up at my apartment building again. This time I saw him from my window before going outside. He was standing in the same spot as the day before. I called the non-emergency police line and explained the situation. They sent an officer over. By the time the officer arrived, Kenneth had left. The officer took my information and filed a report. He said I could request a restraining order through the court if I felt I was in danger but that the process could take time and was not guaranteed to be approved. I called my lawyer the next morning. She said we should file for the restraining order immediately based on the pattern of behavior. She helped me compile all the emails, texts, and documented incidents. We filed the request last week. Yesterday I received notification that the request was denied. The reason given was insufficient evidence of immediate threat or harm. I was told I could refile if Kenneth made additional attempts to contact me or if his behavior escalated further. After receiving that news, I decided I could not stay at my apartment anymore. Kenneth knew where I lived and there was nothing legally preventing him from coming back. I found a small rental unit across town through a coworker's recommendation. I moved there 5 days ago without telling Kenneth the new address. I am still paying my portion of the mortgage for the duplex until it sells, which is straining my finances. But at least I do not spend every evening watching the window to see if Kenneth is standing on the sidewalk again. Since moving, I have had trouble sleeping. I wake up several times during the night and check that the door is locked. I have developed a habit of looking over my shoulder when I leave the building. My hands shake sometimes for no apparent reason. My doctor prescribed medication to help with sleep but I try not to take it unless absolutely necessary because it makes me groggy the next day. The worst part is the internal conflict. There is a part of me that keeps questioning my decisions. This part suggests maybe I am overreacting. It reminds me that Kenneth never actually hurt me and that he is just upset about the divorce. It tells me I should give him another chance because 11 years should count for something. This part of me wants to call him and apologize for everything and agree to go to counseling together. I recognize that this voice is not rational but it is persistent. It becomes louder when I am tired or stressed. I have to actively remind myself why I left and why staying away is the right choice. My lawyer said she will file another request for a restraining order if Kenneth attempts contact again. The divorce proceedings are continuing but will take at least another 2 months to finalize. The duplex is listed for sale but the market is slow right now. I am documenting everything in case I need additional evidence for the court. I am trying to take things one day at a time but some days are harder than others. Update 3. It has been 9 months since my original post and 5 months since my last update. I am writing this final update to close this chapter. The restraining order for my second filing was granted in late spring. Kenneth sent one last message through email after being served with the order. The message said he would always love me and that he hoped someday I would understand he never meant to hurt me. He has not contacted me since then. The restraining order remains in effect. The divorce was finalized 4 months ago. The process took longer than expected because of disagreements about the duplex. Kenneth initially wanted to keep it and buy out my share but could not secure financing on his own. We eventually agreed to sell it and split the proceeds. The house sold after being on the market for nearly 3 months. My lawyer handled most of the communication with Kenneth's lawyer, so I did not have to interact with him directly. When everything was settled, I received my portion of the sale and the division of our shared accounts. It was financially exhausting, but at least it is finished. After the restraining order was granted, I finally felt like I could breathe. The constant checking over my shoulder started to decrease. But other things remained difficult. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I could have done differently. I wondered if I had paid more attention during Kenneth's recovery, maybe he would not have gotten close to Iris. I wondered if I should have been more willing to try counseling earlier. I wondered if I gave up too easily on our marriage. These thoughts would loop in my mind late at night. My counselor pointed out that I was taking responsibility for Kenneth's choices. She reminded me that Kenneth was an adult who made deliberate decisions to pursue someone else while married to me. She said the what-if questions were normal, but that I needed to recognize them for what they were, a way of trying to maintain control over a situation where I had none. Over time these thoughts became less frequent, but they still appear occasionally. The hardest part was accepting that I did nothing wrong by leaving. There was a period where I felt guilty about the pain Kenneth experienced from the divorce. I knew he lost the duplex he wanted to keep. I knew he had to explain to his family and friends why we separated. Part of me felt responsible for that pain, even though logically I knew I was not. My counselor said this was a common response, especially after years in a relationship where the other person gradually shifted blame. It took months before I stopped feeling guilty when I thought about Kenneth being upset. I moved into a studio apartment after leaving the temporary rental. It is small, but it is entirely mine. I painted the walls a soft gray color and bought second-hand furniture that I refinished myself. I hung photos from trips I took before meeting Kenneth. The space does not have any reminders of him. Setting it up felt like building something for myself rather than for survival. When I turned 35 last month, I spent the day rearranging the furniture and adding plants to the windowsill. It felt like a quiet form of celebration. I started taking a pottery class in the evenings through the community center. I am not particularly good at it, but I enjoy the process of working with my hands. The class has a regular group of people who attend each week. We do not talk much about our personal lives, but there is a comfortable routine to showing up and working on our projects side by side. One of the other students, an older man who makes bowls for his grandchildren, told me last week that my vases are getting better. It was a small compliment, but it felt good to be recognized for something I was building from scratch. Reconnecting with old friends has been slow but worthwhile. Beth remained a constant support throughout everything. I also reached out to a few friends I had lost touch with over the years. We met for coffee or went to free concerts in the park. These friendships are different from what I had during my marriage. They exist independent of any romantic relationship, and they remind me that I have an identity outside of being someone's wife. I still struggle with trust. When I meet new people, I am cautious about what I share. I worry that if I get close to someone romantically again, they will eventually hurt me the way Kenneth did. I have not tried dating yet, and I am not sure when or if I will. Right now the idea of being vulnerable with someone new feels overwhelming. My counselor says that is normal and that there is no timeline for when I should be ready. Some days are still difficult. I have nightmares occasionally where I am back in the apartment hallway and Kenneth is blocking the door. I wake up disoriented and have to remind myself where I am. The sleep medication helps on the worst nights, but I have been able to reduce how often I need it. The shaking in my hands has mostly stopped. I have learned to recognize when I am becoming anxious, and I take breaks when I need them. I do not know what the future holds. I do not have a clear plan for the next year or the next 5 years. What I do know is that I am no longer living in survival mode. I am making small decisions each day about what I want my life to look like. I am learning to sit with uncertainty instead of needing everything figured out immediately. The scars from the past year are still there. They show up in unexpected moments. But they are becoming part of my history rather than my entire present. This will be my last update on this situation. I am closing this chapter and moving forward. To anyone reading this who is in a similar situation, I cannot tell you what the right choice is for your relationship. What I can say is that leaving was the hardest thing I have done, and also the thing that allowed me to start building a life where I am not constantly waiting for the next betrayal. It is not a perfect life, and some days are harder than others. But it is mine. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2: Teacher's career destroyed after being caught with ex-student. His wife and I got revenge at school event, karma. I never thought I would be writing this kind of post on Reddit, but here I am, still in shock from discovering my wife of 12 years, Sarah, 34F, having an affair with Jake, 25M, her former student who is now teaching at the same high school. The betrayal runs so deep that I can barely eat or sleep, but I need to get this off my chest. Sarah and I met during our sophomore year in college. We were both in the education program, though in different departments. She was majoring in English with a passion for literature that was contagious, while I was pursuing mathematics. We met at a student-teacher conference where we were both volunteering. I remember being struck by her enthusiasm when she talked about wanting to inspire students to love reading as much as she did. We dated throughout college, and everything just clicked. We shared the same values, wanted the same things in life, and had similar career goals. After graduation, we got married in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. We both landed teaching jobs in our city, she at Roosevelt High teaching English, and I at Lincoln High teaching math. It seemed perfect that we worked at different schools. We could maintain our professional lives separately while sharing everything else. For 10 years, our marriage was solid. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but we always worked through them. We hadn't been able to have children despite trying, but we had made peace with that and were happy with our life together. We had a nice house in a good neighborhood, enjoyed our teaching careers, and spent our summers traveling. Sarah was respected at Roosevelt High, known for running the creative writing club and mentoring students who showed promise in literature. That's where Jake came in. 6 years ago, he was one of her students, bright, creative, and passionate about literature just like her. She mentored him through his college applications and was thrilled when he got accepted to the state university's education program. She kept in touch with him throughout his college years, occasionally meeting for coffee when he was home during breaks. I never worried about it because I trusted her completely, and he was just a kid she had mentored. Everything changed when Jake joined Roosevelt High as a new English teacher this fall. Sarah was ecstatic, proud that her former student was now her colleague. At first, I was happy for her too. She talked about how mature and accomplished Jake had become, how his teaching methods were innovative, and how the students loved him. They were assigned to co-advise the creative writing club and work on the school's annual literary magazine together. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. Sarah started staying at school later and later, always with a ready excuse about club meetings or magazine deadlines. Our dinner conversations became dominated by stories about Jake, his clever lesson plans, his insights into literature, his struggle to balance teaching with his new marriage. Yes, Jake was married too, to Amy, 24F, who he met in college. The changes in Sarah were subtle but significant. She started dressing differently, paying more attention to her appearance. She was constantly checking her phone, smiling at messages. When I asked about it, she would say it was just work stuff, coordinating with Jake about the magazine or club activities. I believed her because I had no reason not to. Last week, everything fell apart. I had a rare evening free from grading papers and decided to surprise Sarah at school. She had texted earlier saying she would be working late on the magazine again. I picked up dinner from her favorite Thai place, thinking we could eat together in her office like we used to do early in our careers. When I pulled into the school parking lot at 7 p.m., it was nearly empty except for 2 cars, Sarah's Honda and a blue Mazda I later learned was Jake's. The school corridors were dim and quiet, with just the emergency lights on. As I approached the English department, I heard muffled laughter coming from the department office. Through the glass panel in the door, I saw something that will haunt me forever. Sarah was perched on her desk, her arms around Jake's neck, kissing him passionately. His hands were places they had no right to be, and they were so engrossed in each other they didn't notice me at all. I felt physically sick. The Thai food fell from my numb fingers, but I managed to pick it up and leave without them seeing me. I drove home in a daze, barely remembering how I got there. I spent that night in our guest room, listening to Sarah come home around 9 p.m., acting completely normal. She even called out asking why I hadn't waited for dinner. I pretended to be asleep. The next morning, I called in sick to work and waited for Sarah to leave. As soon as she was gone, I checked her laptop, something I had never done before in our marriage. Her emails with Jake told the whole sordid story. The affair had been going on for 4 months, starting shortly after the school year began. They had been meeting in her office after hours, and sometimes at his apartment when I had evening commitments at my school. The emails were like a knife to my heart. Sarah wrote about how Jake made her feel alive again, how their shared passion for literature created a connection I could never understand because I was just a math teacher. She wrote about the guilt of betraying me but justified it by saying she and Jake had an intellectual and emotional bond that transcended normal relationships. She even wrote about fantasizing about him during their student-teacher days, though she swore nothing happened back then. When Sarah came home that evening, I confronted her with printouts of the emails. She crumpled immediately, crying and begging for forgiveness. She claimed it wasn't serious, just a midlife crisis thing that got out of hand. But when I brought up the fact that he had been her student, she got defensive, insisting their relationship only turned romantic after he became a teacher. She tried to blame it on feeling disconnected from me, saying I didn't understand her literary passion like Jake did. I packed a bag and left that night. I'm staying with my brother now, who's been incredibly supportive. Sarah has been calling and texting constantly, switching between begging for another chance and accusing me of giving up too easily on our marriage. I've blocked her number. My brother thinks I should report them to the school administration, given the questionable power dynamic between a former teacher and student. But there's more. Through a mutual friend, I learned that Jake's wife Amy has no idea about the affair. She apparently works as a nurse and often has night shifts, which is when Jake and Sarah would meet at his apartment. I'm lost about what to do next. Part of me wants to expose everything, to the school board, to Amy, to everyone. But another part just wants to walk away from this mess and try to rebuild my life. I've contacted a divorce lawyer who says I have a strong case with the email evidence. I just can't believe this is my life now. 12 years of marriage destroyed because my wife couldn't resist her former student. Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your support and advice helped me through some really dark days. Many of you urged me to tell Jake's wife Amy about the affair, saying she deserved to know the truth just like I did. After wrestling with this decision for several days, I finally decided to act. I found Amy on Facebook. It wasn't hard since Jake's profile still listed him as married to her. I spent hours drafting and redrafting a message to her, trying to find the right words to tell someone their world was about to shatter. Finally, I sent her a brief message explaining who I was, along with screenshots of some of Sarah and Jake's emails. I chose the least explicit ones but made sure they clearly showed the affair was real. Amy responded within 3 hours. Her message was brief but devastating. She had suspected something was wrong for months, but Jake had convinced her she was being paranoid. She asked to meet in person. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop the next morning. She had a night shift at the hospital that evening and said she couldn't focus on work without knowing everything. Meeting Amy was surreal. She looked so young, reminding me that she was barely older than some of my senior students. Over coffee, she told me how Jake had changed over the past few months. He was always at school late, claiming he was working on the literary magazine with Sarah. When Amy would surprise him at school during her days off, he was never where he said he would be. Once, she had gone looking for him and found Sarah instead, who smoothly told her Jake was in a department meeting and couldn't be disturbed. As we talked, Amy revealed more red flags she had noticed. Jake had changed his phone password recently. He was always texting, but would angle his phone away from her. He had started doing his own laundry, something he never did before. When she found a receipt for an expensive restaurant in his coat pocket, a date night she hadn't been part of, he claimed it was a faculty dinner. While we were sharing our stories, Amy mentioned that the school's annual Spring Arts Festival was happening that weekend. It was a big event where the literary magazine would be launched, and both Sarah and Jake were scheduled to present it. Amy's eyes got hard when she talked about it, and she suggested we confront them there, in front of everyone. My first instinct was that it seemed too dramatic, too public. But as Amy pointed out, they hadn't shown any concern for our dignity or privacy while carrying on their affair. We spent the next 2 days planning. Amy still had access to Jake's email and found the festival program. Sarah and Jake were scheduled to present the magazine at 2 p.m. Amy knew the tech guy who would be running the audiovisual equipment. He was a frequent patient at her hospital. She convinced him to help us by telling him her plan to surprise Jake with a romantic video for their anniversary. She had him set up the screenshots of the emails to be ready to project. The festival was packed when we arrived. The auditorium was full of students, parents, teachers, and administrators. Sarah and Jake were on stage, looking professional and polished as they presented the magazine. They talked about the students' creative work, about nurturing young talent. The hypocrisy made me sick. Right after their presentation, before anyone else could speak, Amy walked confidently to the stage. She asked the organizers if she could say a few words about her husband's achievement. They knew her as Jake's wife and quickly agreed. None of them noticed me quietly moving to the side of the stage. Amy started her speech perfectly, congratulating the editorial team and praising the students' work. Then she turned to Jake and asked in a clear, carrying voice if working late on the magazine with Sarah was code for their affair. The auditorium went completely silent. Sarah stepped forward, probably to try to take control of the situation, but froze when the first email appeared on the screen behind her. It was the one where she wrote about Jake making her feel young again, about their special connection. Jake lunged for the microphone, but I was already on stage. I didn't say anything, I didn't need to. The emails spoke for themselves. Some students had their phones out, recording everything. Sarah was crying, Jake was shouting about privacy violation, but it was too late. Everything was out in the open. The principal finally managed to take control of the situation, ending the event early and ordering everyone to leave. He had security escort Sarah and Jake out separately. The chaos was intense. Students were texting and calling, parents were demanding explanations, other teachers were trying to maintain order. The next morning, both Sarah and Jake were suspended pending an investigation. The school board was especially concerned about the possibility that their relationship might have started when Jake was still a student. Sarah keeps insisting it didn't, but given how she lied about everything else, who knows what's true anymore. Amy moved out of their apartment that weekend. She's staying with her parents now, who are being incredibly supportive. Jake's parents, both retired teachers themselves, are devastated. They came to see Amy and apologized for their son's behavior, which just made her cry harder. Sarah's family reached out to me. Her sister, who was one of my closest friends, called crying. She said their parents are heartbroken. They had always been so proud of Sarah's teaching career. Now her reputation is ruined, and she did it to herself. Sarah finally stopped trying to contact me, probably on advice from her lawyer. Her last message was angry, saying Amy and I had deliberately destroyed her career. She's right, we did deliberately expose them. But they destroyed their own careers when they chose to have an affair. Amy and I have been meeting regularly for coffee. It helps to talk to someone who understands exactly what you're going through. We're both dealing with the same feelings of betrayal, anger, and humiliation. But we're also helping each other stay strong through the divorce process that we both know is coming. Update 2. The dust has finally settled somewhat, and I can now share what happened after the Spring Arts Festival incident. The school board investigation was thorough and revealed more than anyone expected. While they couldn't find concrete evidence of an inappropriate relationship during Jake's student years, they discovered something else disturbing. Sarah had been instrumental in getting Jake his teaching position at Roosevelt High. She hadn't just written him a recommendation letter, she had actively campaigned for him to be hired, attending every interview committee meeting even though she wasn't officially on the committee, and pushing back against other candidates who had more experience. The investigation revealed that Sarah had also helped Jake prepare for his interviews, giving him inside information about what the committee was looking for. She had even convinced the department head to create an additional English teaching position, arguing that they needed someone specifically for creative writing, a position that was tailored to Jake's strengths. All of this was done without disclosing their ongoing personal relationship, which the board found to be a serious ethical violation. Both Sarah and Jake resigned before they could be formally terminated. Sarah lost her teaching license for professional misconduct, not just for the affair, but for abusing her position to secure Jake's employment and compromising the hiring process. Jake managed to keep his license since he was the junior party in the professional relationship, but he's been blacklisted from our school district. A former colleague told me he's now teaching at a private school in Minnesota, where Amy's parents coincidentally live. She's bitter about that, she can't even visit her family without the risk of running into him. The divorces are moving forward smoothly. Sarah isn't contesting anything, probably because she knows the email evidence would destroy her in court. She agreed to let me keep the house, though I'm planning to sell it anyway, too many memories. Jake and Amy's divorce is also uncontested. Since they were only married for 2 years and had no children or major assets together, it's relatively straightforward. Amy has been an unexpected source of strength through all this. We've been helping each other with paperwork, attending court dates together, and sharing lawyer recommendations. She's handling everything better than I am, but as she points out, her marriage was shorter and she's younger, she has more time to start over. Sometimes I feel ancient at 35, trying to imagine dating again after 12 years of marriage. What's really touched me is the support from my school community. My students at Lincoln High have been incredibly kind, even though many of them knew Sarah from Roosevelt High or had siblings who were in her classes. My department head rearranged my schedule to give me time for legal appointments, and other teachers have been covering my detention duties without being asked. Last week, I had to pack up Sarah's things when she finally arranged to collect them. She sent her brother instead of coming herself. Amy offered to help, saying she'd done the same with Jake's stuff and knew how hard it was. We spent a Saturday sorting through 12 years of marriage, putting Sarah's books, clothes, and personal items in boxes. Finding old photos and love letters was like being punched in the gut repeatedly. Amy found me sitting on the floor of the home office, holding our wedding album, and simply sat with me until I could breathe normally again. The house feels empty now. Sarah's extensive book collection left obvious gaps on our shelves. Her reading chair in the living room, her favorite coffee mug, her side of the closet, everything feels like a reminder of what I've lost. But Amy made a good point, these spaces aren't empty, they're clean. Ready for something new. Jake's parents reached out to both Amy and me last week. They're selling their house and moving to Florida, partly to be away from the scandal. They apologized again for Jake's behavior and offered to be character witnesses in our divorces if needed. It was a kind gesture, but we declined. We don't want to drag this out any longer than necessary. Sarah's family is still divided. Her sister still calls occasionally to check on me, but her parents have retreated into silence. I heard they're struggling to reconcile the daughter they thought they knew with the person who could betray her marriage and profession so completely. The hardest part now is facing the future. I've been in this weird limbo where I'm technically still married but functionally single. The divorce should be final in a few months, and then I'll have to figure out who I'm outside of being Sarah's husband. At least I have Amy to talk to, someone who understands exactly what this feels like. Update 3, Amy and I continued meeting even after both divorces were finalized. What started as mutual support and trauma evolved into a genuine friendship, and eventually, something more. Neither of us planned it or saw it coming. We were just two people who understood each other's pain and found comfort in that understanding. The transition from friends to something more happened gradually. We had been having regular coffee meetups to discuss divorce proceedings, but even after everything was finalized, we kept meeting. Our conversations shifted from our exes to our lives, our dreams, our fears. I found myself looking forward to seeing her, planning my week around our coffee dates. 3 months ago, Amy suggested we try having a real date. I was hesitant at first, dating my ex-wife's affair partner's ex-wife seemed like something out of a bad soap opera. But with Amy, everything felt natural and honest. She understood my trust issues because she had them too. We didn't have to explain our baggage to each other because we had been there for each other through it all. Our first official date was nothing fancy, just dinner at a restaurant in a different town where nobody knew our story. We talked for hours, not about Sarah or Jake or our divorces, but about ourselves. I learned that Amy loved hiking and had a secret passion for baking. She learned about my collection of vintage calculators and my dream of writing a math textbook someday. Word about us eventually reached Sarah through mutual friends. She sent a nasty email calling us hypocrites and accusing us of having planned this all along. Amy surprised me with her response, a simple message saying that unlike them, we didn't betray anyone. We waited until both divorces were final, we were honest about our feelings, and we didn't hurt anyone in the process. I've started teaching at a new school in a different district. The fresh start has been good for me. My new colleagues don't know my history, and I can just be myself without the weight of being the teacher whose wife had an affair with her former student. My students are great, and I'm finally enjoying teaching again. Amy is working on her master's degree in psychology, specializing in trauma and relationship counseling. Her experience with Jake's betrayal influenced her career choice. She wants to help others who have gone through similar situations. She's particularly interested in studying the impact of infidelity on relationships and how people rebuild trust after betrayal. Sometimes we joke that we're her first case study. We're taking things slowly, both aware of our past wounds. We haven't moved in together, though we spend a lot of time at each other's places. Amy's daughter from a previous relationship, Emma, 4F, has started calling me Mr. Math because I help her count everything. Having her in my life has helped heal parts of me I didn't even know were broken. Sometimes I think about how different my life would be if Sarah hadn't cheated. I probably would still be teaching at Lincoln High, still living in our old house, still planning the future we had mapped out. But then I look at Amy and Emma, and I realize that sometimes life's worst moments can lead to unexpected happiness. We're not planning our future yet, we're both a bit gun-shy about long-term commitments. But for the first time since discovering Sarah's betrayal, I'm excited about what tomorrow might bring. Amy and I are just enjoying the present, taking each day as it comes, and finding joy in building something honest and real together.